Hello, welcome to another weekly devotion with Pastor Andrew. That's me. So now we're in this interesting time in the season of Easter. Let me adjust that a little bit. Interesting time in the season of Easter because we're really kind of to started last week, this last Sunday, as we got these readings and these preparatory readings. You know, our theme was being bold in faith. And it's really, that theme continues this week as we move forward both in the book of Acts. This week we jump from chapter 7. If we remember, there was the stoning of Stephen, the first Christian martyr. Everyone went out to stone him, but they threw their coats where? At the foot of a young man named Saul, who of course, that's important because Saul is the one that becomes Paul. Right, who has all these letters in the New Testament, epistles, etc. So we jump from chapter 7 to 17, where Saul is now Paul, and Paul is going around and beginning or continuing his somewhat infancy, I would say toddlership, I guess, for lack of a better term, of his ministry. But what is he doing? He goes, in chapter 17, he goes and he's looking around Rome, right? He's looking around Rome, and what does he see? He sees, we'll get to that in a minute. But we're moving towards this idea of, what are you all about? That's really almost what I want to say. I don't know that I'll title my sermon. I haven't written it yet, but it's just, what? Now I've already forgotten. What will you say? Who are you? This declaration of, what do you believe? Which really is kind of an overarching question when it comes to faith, right? But this is a key part of it because it's like, well, what do you believe? And we'll get to that in a minute. So we talk about that, but then we jump to a continuation from the book of John in chapter 14. There they are gathered around the table of the Last Supper. I believe Judas has already left to do what he needs to do. As we heard this last week, Jesus says these words that we've probably heard at least one or two funerals. I go and prepare a place for you. If it were not so, and you were going to be with me. If it were not so, why would I go and do this? Excuse me. So, as I'm in the Father, and the Father is in me, and because you know me, you're with the Father. So all these connections, but a continuation of that, which we'll hear this coming Sunday, but it's a continuation of this really reassurance of faith, being bold in faith. It's my point is, we're moving from, yay, Jesus is resurrected, right, to I'm resurrected, but soon I will be going. This is that. Obviously, as we look back and he's seeing this at the Last Supper, we know what's going to happen, right? We know what's coming. They don't, even though he's told them quite a few times that he won't be with them forever. They might just be like, well, yeah, we all die or whatever. But he's talking a lot sooner than that, isn't he? So it's this move of, I'm with you, I've given you these teachings, but I'm going to be going soon, and then it's going to be up to you. It's like, this is soon to be yours. The church, the faith, etc. Soon you will be the leaders. And, of course, that gets us to the, preparatory work, pre-Pentecostal, I was going to say takeover, that's not right. Pre-Pentecostal invitation to be the church, capital C. I hope all that makes sense. So that's really where we're moving. The season of Easter is all about resurrection, getting out there, getting over this fear, this new faith. Let me give you some more lessons. And it's like, okay, now it's your turn. Which, of course, as I think I said last week, is the point of the Pentecost season, or ordinary time, which is the longest season in the church, to say, all right, here it is. How are you out there? How are you being the church? Specifically, this is our focus for the season. I hope that makes sense. But we will talk about, because, gosh, there's just so many connections. We will be talking about, again, Acts 17, verses 22 through 31. Then Paul stood in front of the Areopagus, I think that's how you say that, and he said, Athenians. Oh, he's in Athens. That's right, he's in Athens. Which is, well, whatever. Athenians, I see how extremely religious you are in every way. For as I went through the city and looked carefully at the objects of your worship, I found among them an altar with the inscription, To an unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, he who is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by human hands, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives of all mortals life and breath and all things. From one ancestor he made all nations to inhabit the whole earth. Abraham, right? And he allotted the times of their existence and the boundaries of the places where they would live, so that they would search for God and perhaps grope for him. I don't know about that translation. And find him, though indeed he is not far from each one of us. See, there isn't punctuation here either. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we too are his offering. Since we are God's offspring, we ought not to think that the deity is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of mortals. While God has overlooked the times of humans' ignorance, now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will have the world judged in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed, and of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. So we hear all that and we might go, oh yeah, okay. And I'm just looking here, who is going to be, Nick. I was just looking who's going to be the reader this coming Sunday. So we might hear all that and go, okay, well, Paul's making this, he's giving this speech. The only speech he gives in Acts, though. The only speech that he gives in Acts. But this is, again, that toddlership of his ministry to begin to spreading the word. And where does he start? He starts right at, I'm just looking here. Oh, that's wrong. Sorry. He starts right there in Rome because he comes in and he looks around. And what does he see? He sees people worshiping God, but just all kinds of gods. Here, I have it written here. He's in Athens. An unexpected visit to Athens. I don't know why I kept saying Rome. This unexpected visit to Athens, and he looks around, and they have shrines for every kind of god that you could ever think of. And there's even one that says, to the unknown God. Why is this important? Well, because he's saying, people, you worship, but you don't even know who you're worshiping or what you're worshiping. You just kind of throw it all out there. You're like, you're looking, you have a god, but if that fails, then, here's a shrine of another one, and we're covered. So it's like you got backup gods for your backup gods for your backup gods. And he goes, is this really what you want? No. And then he starts to proclaim what we would call the truth, right? Look, God has given you all these things that you've chosen to ignore it because you need to be, and here's where there's going to be a connection, or is a connection, you must be bold in your faith. You must have reliance and the endurance. Because many of these people also are like, oh yes, well, there is God, the God, that Paul's talking about, but they're like, yeah, but, just in case, we're going to have this other one. And they even, and that's even the point. Well, we even have this one that just kind of covers everything. It's like, here's a shrine to the unknown God, asterisk, whatever that might be, miscellaneous, But he's saying, you've been given this, and you need to focus your faith. You need to focus that. So here's what our devotional writer says. Paul's visit to Athens was unexpected. His message of Christ crucified had angered the Jews at Thessalonica to the point that they followed him to Beroea. Paul's safety was in jeopardy, so the Berean believers sent him off to Athens. While he waited for his colleagues to join him, he walked about the city where he discovered shrines and altars dedicated to these various gods. At the Areopagus Hill, near the famous Temple of Athena, Paul addressed those gathered there, telling them that their worship of graven images was misguided. He commended them for being religious. Yes, good, you have faith. Wonderful. But noted that they were looking for God in the wrong places. Instead, he challenged them to note the one and only true God, who does not live in shrines made by humans. This is the God who made the world and everything in it. Being Lord of heaven and earth, the God who raised from the dead Jesus, right? That ending there. God has done this. He has judged us in righteousness by a man who he has appointed, Jesus. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. You have already, these things have been accomplished for you, but still you're not holding on to them. You might even say, yeah, I believe that, but you're not, the word they use here, but you must continuously grope, grab for it. And be like, yes, I believe this. There's that kind of excitement. Yes, I'm going to hold on to this. Oh, this, and this happened, and life's going bad. Yes, but I have this. It's like an assurance. Yeah. This is the God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, a God raised from the dead, who raised from the dead Jesus, who was sent into the world to bring justice and peace for those who follow him. Yes, this person that wrote this is just, usually it says, like MDiv or pastor or head of this for a seminary or whatever. This just says retired minister. It just says retired. Anyway, but this is what's happening here. And what's so amazing is this is happening, when Paul was around way back when, this infancy really of the Christian church, right? Paul hasn't even gone out to all these different places. He's traveling and he's kind of this traveling minister. And he's getting his footing really for what will become the building of the Christian church, capital C, right? And I lost my train of thought. But this is what we have today, because how many backup gods do we have? Well, I do believe in this, but it's really not meeting my expectations or my needs right now. But this is, and so I'm going to kind of lean this way. It's being aware of those things, right? It's the idea of what is our God? What is our God above other gods? I think I heard that somewhere. I don't know. It was some kind of command or something. I don't know. Some law, maybe. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is it's same for us today. You have all these things. You have these shrines. You have these things to remember. Oh, well, look, this is our devotion to God. Well, God doesn't live there. God isn't in this. God isn't in that. God has accomplished these things. And again, don't hear me saying, oh, God's in the trees and God's all around us. Yes, but it's bigger than that. It's not as simple as that. But then it is, I guess. Focus on God. That's what's being that's what Paul is pointing out here. Too much coffee as I grab another drink. There's another pastor that, several pastors that do this, but one pastor I was like, let's have some tea. And I was like, oh, how can he do that? Because I thought he drank caffeinated tea. He doesn't. He drinks non-caffeinated tea. He drinks I think actually it's an herbal tea to help you calm down. Maybe that's what I should do. But this is the idea. What is happening? We're moving forward, but it's this boldness of faith. Here again, as we'll hear in the sermon, I've already, mixing that together in my head. This is what we hear in the sermon. What is it to be bold in faith, and what does that faith look like as we go out into the world, and how are we aware of it as there's all of these things coming at us that in a sense seem to demand worship, and we don't realize it. So, lots today, lots kind of thrown out there, but the big question here is, what are we aware of, and how are we being bold in our faith, and how is that guiding our lives? And what does that look like for us? What does that look like? All right, more to come. In my mind, somehow I think I've connected that to what we'll talk about, or what we'll hear on Sunday. Let's close in prayer. As we journey through this day, help us to see your finger at work in all that takes place in our lives, trusting the outcome because it is in your hands, O Lord. Amen. Yes, very good. So, until next week, God bless.